A lot of the decline has to do with the parents. In middle school, they're trying to find themselves. But parents are like, okay, they grown, they look grown, but they need a lot of help. They need a lot of attention.
Hey everyone, welcome back to I Think I Love My Kids podcast. I'm your host Latoya, and I have a very special guest today. This is Miss Adrian from Diverse I Learning.
Hello, everyone. I'm Adrian Cox-Settles. I am the founder and owner of Diverse Interactive Learning Tutoring Center. We've been in business 7 years, pretty successful, 5-star rating, 7 consecutive years. We have ranked in the top 3 tutoring businesses in Allentown, PA, and plus we are online. As far as my family, I have a beautiful husband. I have 3 amazing sons. They're very active, academics, athletics, and so on and so forth. So my oldest 2 are in college. One's working on his PhD at UCLA. The middle one is working on his bachelor's in English. And then I have a junior. We're going to be still continuing the college process. I'm prepping him now for the SAT and, getting him ready for different things. And as far as meeting you, I met you on that morning meetup. Your podcast sounds very interesting. And I like your philosophy of even parents not be so fast to go to hitting the child, but actually trying to understand the child without any type of physical abuse. So I'm all for that. So I was like, yes, I would love to be on her show and connect to her audience and let them know that I'm here also.
What it has been your child moment this week as a parent or maybe even as a business owner?
I guess I had one tutor didn't follow the protocol as much. The tutor was supposed to send out a reminder to one of the clients to remind them that, yesterday was a session. The person still didn't reply during the reminder if they came late. However, the tutor was new, so I understood that, but I had to reinforce that. Just don't let a session go by. We have to remind the clients. Sometimes they need reminding, even though they might get a reminder from Zoom. Us as a business, we have to still remind them because sometimes people oversleep and things like that. That was interesting. And the person understood because we just didn't get a 5-star rating for nothing. It takes hard work. And things like that had to be addressed because every little thing has to be addressed and we have to make sure that the clients are very happy. That was a moment.
When I think about conscious parenting, a lot of times I tell people sometimes you have to conscious parent not just only your kids, you have to do it to the people around you, the people that you work with, your family members, sometimes even your parents, your spouse.
Yes.
Yes.
And also, I wanted to say, I do have, a career of teaching. I've been a parent, I've been a teacher, I've been a business owner. So, I can, maneuver
How long
those
have
little
you been
things.
a teacher?
25 years.
Yes, girl, yes. You got the nitty gritty experience. You already know what it's like to work with parents.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I want to know, what is one parenting belief that you have had to unlearn?
Growing up the way I grew up, discipline was a big thing. And discipline came with physical disciplining. And so, my aunt beat my cousins, and if someone got on my grandmother's nerves, she would beat them. And so sometimes you're following the tradition of you think it's okay, someone does wrong, go ahead and spank them, tap them, or whatnot. I had to undo that notion that was okay. Like I said, it was hard because growing up that way, you thinking, okay, the person not listening, oh, they need spanking. But, as you think about slavery and things like that, those things were done to us. Why would I want to do that to my child? That's like a systematic thing. You see that, you think that's normal. But once you really start learning about your history and learn that wasn't normal, why are you replicating the slave master? Why are you doing that? You have to really get in touch and be like, wow, am I replicating the slave master? Maybe not to that extent, but the mindset is still that extent. And so I had to undo that mindset. My sons have been blessed. They didn't have to go through that. My husband was anti that with the kids. He would be like, no, they need time out, or we need to make sure they do that. And so I'm so happy that, I did have a husband to follow the lead, because if I was like a single parent, that would have been the go-to when you're having sons. Like sometimes, if you don't have someone to kind of help you undo that mindset, that's the go-to. You got sons that's showing up. Oh yeah, I'm gonna show them. But if you have a man saying, no, we're not gonna do this. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do something different. But if you take the time and listen, say, okay, I think he knows best for the sons, then that's something that was undone with me. That mindset was undone. Learning about slavery, of course, and also taking my husband's point of view and understanding where he came from. So I had to undo that part, the discipline, the physical discipline that, I grew up knowing.
I'm not sure if you know this. For the longest time, I had been a single parent. We are not together anymore. But one of the things, and I learned about the results of how slavery has affected all of us. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. We are all deeply affected and traumatized by slavery. And I'm sure you can see this side of it as well, being a teacher. You can't put your hands on other people's kids. And I do understand where you're coming from as far as like letting a man lead and coming up with different things, because it is a young boy. My son is currently with his dad now. And one of the things that I got him to open up his mind to conscious parenting was letting him know, like, yo, if someone wanted to put their hands on our child because he's not listening, or he's being a kid doing what he wants to do, how would you feel about that? If they talk to him in the manner that you are talking to him, you're going to be ready to throw fists up and be ready to fight another person. So when he actually internalized that, I think that's where the progress started to change in him and in his heart. And I love that. And at the same time, I still trust him to be the man for his child and teach his son how to be a man. He had his younger years where he got that nurturing and stuff from me. It's still full balance. And for any other single parents out there, just having healthy male leadership role in your son's life will make a tremendous amount of difference.
Oh my goodness. I didn't have those role models, active role models in my life. Grandfathers passed before I was born. My dad, he was more active with his, new wife and everything else. So yeah, I didn't have that. So it's very important to have that in my life. There's a lot of dimensions to those type of things.
Because we are on this conscious parenting journey. How do you stay grounded when you're overwhelmed or triggered, especially when it comes to
I have to take into consideration that this is a different, they're in a different generation, which is a pretty big thing, because like I said, the way we grew up, we saw things differently. Certain things we didn't do. Expression wasn't really important when we were growing up. We didn't really have the right of expression. Whatever was said, that's how it went. I do respect that they do have a voice, but it still has to be respectful. And I try to see it from where they're coming from, but I still try to give them lessons and let them know how other people see it, so they can see how the generations see things, how, so that we can come together. So I stay grounded, I guess, by, first of all, being grateful. I'm just grateful that, I have 3 sons that are still here. A lot of times the Black boys, whether they get taken or, they get killed or they strung out or, different situations are coming for them. So I'm just grateful just to have my sons. So I just stay grounded and just, just grateful to God just for allowing me to have them still here, allowing me to actually be productive in their lives and allow them to be good people, because the next female or the Black mom, her son is gone, or her son is missing, or her son is in jail, or her son is strung out. And that could happen to anybody. God wrote the story, and he just wrote my story differently, but that could have easily been me, given whatever situation he wanted me to be in. So I'm just grateful that he chose me not to be in that situation, and because of that, that's why I'm grounded.
I said these black boys, oh my goodness. I just my heart as a mother to the black son, it is, when I think about the plight of the black man, I think about like, okay, my son is going to have to endure this one day,
Yeah, it's serious. You're serious. You thinking when they go outside, are they gonna come back? You thinking if someone gonna see their humanity for who they are? Are they gonna get judged by their hair or what they're wearing? It's just stuff that this extra stuff that we think of that maybe others don't. And it's real. Not one, not two, but three. I have to think about. You try to teach them good values. You try to teach them how to survive out there. How to interact with the police. What to do, what not to do. It's a lot of lessons that we have to really teach that the average person, that don't look like us might not know. I just try to be real strategic, try to be understanding, and try to be what they say, prayed up.
Do you ever feel like your inner child is parenting your kids, or did you have to reparent your inner child when it comes to raising your kids?
When it comes to parenting, I always tell them, make sure this doesn't happen. Let me know if I find out any type of bullying is going on. I'm like first one at the school, trying to have a meeting with the parent themselves. Forget, I'll talk to the principal, like, let me have a meeting with the parent. And, I have meetings with parent one-to-one because I need them to know that this is not going to happen. When I was younger, being bullied and things like that, people did take advantage of me until I got to a point where I'm like, nah, that's not going to happen. I had to get to that point, but become a different person of that younger me, and so that person comes out. Now we're not gonna let this happen. And I guess sometimes I might say, they might, well, dang, man, you think this is going to happen, or you think this is going to happen? Oh, I got to watch out for this. And my husband, like, we're not going to have them living in fear. My husband said, and I said, it's not about fear, it's about awareness. He was like, so I'm very aware, and so he was like, no, the things you telling them is going to, I said, no, it's about them being aware, letting them know out there is real. They might not see it where we live, and things might be peaceful, but in the real world, is you have to beware. So that's when my inner child comes out in the parenting. But I learned to, like, calm down a little bit, like I said, let my husband kind of guide them through, because I guess I can be too real. I guess I can be too real, maybe. And I don't want people to have nightmares or anything, but I do come with the truth, and I let them know based on what's going on. Kids are being kidnapped. You might not see it, but kids are being kidnapped, so that might come up. Be careful, be with someone else, things like that. So that's where it comes up. My awareness comes up from me, from that inner child.
Look, I get it. As somebody who had a mother that was bullied, it was because she moved to this country from the UK as a young girl. I think she was in her teens as well, and people used to make fun of her for how she spoke. So when it came to me being bullied, look, Mama Bear came out with the claws on and everything. Like,
right.
So I get it.
Yeah, this not happening. Yeah. That's a lot, to be bullied for years or whatever. It's a lot. It takes a toll on you, So I definitely. And matter of fact, I wrote a poem about it. I'm also a poet, and I have a poem called "Letter to My Bully," and it's a whole poem dedicated, a letter of how the bully made me feel and everything else. So I actually, have written a poem in my book B.E.
That is transformational. When I tell you it, I know it released a lot of inner feelings. I truly believe you making that letter healed your inner child, or healed a portion of your inner child, for sure. Do you ever wrestle with guilt, burnout, or maybe even comparison?
So being a teacher, and I was going to grad school at a particular time, and my sons are athletic. And so they were always in sports. I'm like the football mom, the soccer mom, the baseball mom, the basketball mom. I had different hats. And so my youngest, my oldest one, he's more of an academic, but my two youngest, they were more into sports. And so it's kind of like a burnout in a way because they're so athletic and we would have to have them in so many different things. And then they're smart too, so they will be in all these competitions, spelling bees, Arabic competitions, Quran, because I'm Muslim, so they would be in all these academic, things. So that was kind of a burnout, but I think it really gave me a lot of energy because I'm really competitive also, and I love competition. But it was like, going to this game, sitting for this game, you gotta go here. So, and then we had to travel in Baltimore. The traffic can be really bad, and so sometimes we sitting in traffic, going back and forth. Um, so that was a lot. However, the achievements were was worth it.
Yeah.
Because when I grew up, I didn't really have that. I was like, I didn't really have protection growing up. I was the oldest. And so I was the one fighting, and I didn't have a big brother or big cousins. I was the oldest. So I had to endure a lot when I was growing up. But now God has blessed me with a husband and three sons. So I'm totally protected, And so I'm just feeling blessed because I didn't have it. I was out there like, why me? Why I'm getting picked on. But He has definitely blessed me with a lot of security now. And so I'm very compassionate and humble.
I love that. I love that. Being an oldest daughter myself, and as well, and even though I'm single, I've learned to build a community around myself. Until, because I still have hope one day that I'll marry again.
I'll pray for you. Yeah, he's out there. He's out there waiting. He's out there.
But in the meantime, I'm building up my community around me and around my children so that we can feel safe and we can feel protected. And I too have been blessed tremendously, and I'm so grateful for that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Because you have the time now to really focus on yourself and see what you want and learn who you are, and become strong in your values and things like that. You have this time to really know who you are. So when that person comes, he has to come correct. And that's beautiful, and you have all that support behind you, to be there if something doesn't happen or just to support you in your journey. So that's beautiful. Take your time, find yourself, get the relationships built up really tight with your child, so I think that's beautiful when you trying to really dig in deep and learn who you are and reach those goals, because sometimes when you get married you have to slack off somewhat, what I'm saying, you can't spend as much time as you want to. So this is your time to go and get everything you can get. And then if you have a husband that's the same as you might still be able to go all in, but it depends. Sometimes you have to cut back a little bit so that you can build the family structure, but sometimes you get that person like, okay, I'm behind you 100%. So it depends. So I would just say, just you're doing great. Just keep building yourself, and when the time comes, it'll come. But God gotta have that for you. Your time will come, but right now is your time, and go for it and do everything you can do at this moment, with no strings attached.
I want you to tell us about your business. Who do you serve and why?
Okay. So my business is Diverse Interactive Learning Tutoring Center. Our site is in Allentown, PA. However, most of our clients are online, and we service kindergarten to 12th grade, college students, and we help teachers that are teachers that want to be math teachers pass the practice math test, and nurses pass the math TEAS test. And so we help out with all general subjects and test prep, SAT, ACT, IC, all the different test preps. We help out with everything. I have like now 9 active tutors right now. This summer I gave scholarships to several students to have a free math online program, and so that's going on until the beginning of August. So I give a lot of free tutoring, programs, for the community. I'm very attached to, where I'm from, Baltimore City, Maryland. A lot of my clientels come from there because they know me. I'm like, they think of my name, they think of math, and everybody, a lot of people know me for that. So I love to serve my community. Um, and I do it, because at first I was just tutoring. It was myself. So first, my business was Math. Math Does Matter, and that's the original business. Math Does Matter LLC. So it was all math, and it was me. But I started getting so many people, so I started adding on more math tutors, and then people wanted English and Spanish and Quran and everything. So I started bringing in a lot of tutors, and they tutor many things. So I made it diverse, interactive learning, so I can reach people in all the general subjects and everything. And so I do it because I'm able to touch, people, especially children throughout the USA. I'm able to, I have so many success stories. Like I said, we have a 5-star rating, 7 consecutive years. If you Google, you'll see all the success stories. But, I feel that we're really making a difference. In a classroom, of course I can still make a difference, but it's kind of limited, to the class, and, limited to whatever the admin says, or whatever the time limit and things like that. But with my own tutoring business, I have to say how when things to go. We assess people, the kids, for free to see where they are, and I match tutors with them, and we help fill in the gaps and everything else to get them to where they want to be. I was recognized as one of the top social leaders in 2025, and hosting Stir magazine. So that was really, I'm really happy about that, because I am passionate about helping people succeed. And I wish I would have had someone like that with me, but a lot of the elementary years was a joke. People joke, laughing, and people didn't take education seriously. So I had to really push hard to get those gaps filled in, and and I scored high on different things. I was able to go to college and so on and so forth, and I taught back in my community, so I wanted to give back.
Because you have so much experience with kids, and I think this will help not just the homeschool moms, but even the moms whose kids do go to school and come home, and they are still a lightning ball of energy because they
Oh,
were not
yes.
able to get it out during the school day. What is some advice that you would have for a mom that's basically dealing with a kid that, they got to touch everything, they got to look, my kids like
Yes.
doing cartwheels. I'm like, look, if you clean
Yes.
up, you could do all the cartwheels that you want all over the place.
Yes.
So I just want to know what some advice you have.
Yeah. Since they took like recess, kids don't have as much recess as they used to when we were in school. And that's a big issue for parents and for teachers. Me being a teacher, having kids are athletic and we're not able to get recess, it's a big deal. The teachers go through it also. So for parents, one thing I would say, if you have sons like me, like I said, my sons, are athletes, they still play. I would say before you take them home, take them to the playground. Take them to the playground, sit down at the playground, and make sure you watch them, but have them run around, or take them to the track, have a ball. Try to figure out what your child like. Does your child like basketball? Whatever your child likes, take them out. And even if they're not athletic, you take them out and you let them play. But I would say it's before you get home, and then you got to cook, clean, everything else. Which you can kind of switch that to the weekend and try to do prepping. That's another thing. But I would say take them to the playground or to the track, and have them there for like a half hour to an hour, and let them run. It will really do you justice, because when you get them home, they're going to be so tired, and they might want to lie down, or might want to try to go to sleep, but try not to have them go to sleep, because they'll be up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So I would just say take them to the playground, take them somewhere to be active. If you want to, you can take them swimming. If you have like, YMCA or something like that, take them anywhere that's going to release that energy, because a lot of times you cannot match that energy. And when they're in school, they're not able to use it. Because like I said, I have taught, even 8th graders, and they don't really have gym. They have to wait for a semester to have gym. And these kids are my height. they athletic. Everything they want to do is ball up a ball and act like they throwing, a basketball, or they want to act like they dunking, things like that, and like I said, it's a lot of energy. And if you don't use that energy right, it can be a problem in the school and outside. So take them to the playground, take them to the track, take them anywhere and just let them run. Sometimes they just want to run, and then you should be rested, and then take them home, and then afterwards you'll see they'll be almost out. I think that they need to get rid of that energy. If not, they're gonna go home and start destroying stuff. Not really destroying, but touching stuff. You have the house nice and clean and neat, but they taking the toys, you're taking this, just have one room that you have the toys and stuff in, so it won't be all over your house. Sometimes parents have toys everywhere, so the kids are everywhere. Have one room that's confined to go ahead if you're gonna play or whatever, but make sure you clean it up before you come out. So I would advise that. Like I said, athletes, they always wrestling, always jumping, always trying to dribble, always trying to play soccer, always trying. It's a lot. It's a lot. I'm like, go ahead out in the backyard. Yeah, it's a lot. Boys with their moms, they trying to play on you. Someone trying to dunk on me. I'm like, you better watch out. Turn around. And once they get taller than you, they think you. I'm like, nah. But they have to use it or you will go crazy because it's just too much. And then you're tired, they got to go out.
How do you define success as a mom and a business owner?
I define success as a mom as producing successful or good-mannered children, well behaved, goal driven, young men that are able to be leaders, have respect for women, and respect for themselves. So I feel that, I consider that a success. And, in success, you're always still working. So we haven't reached success because they're still growing. We'll see when the grandkids go, once the grandkids come, we'll see if the success actually kicked in, depending on what type of fathers they become. But it's still a learning process. I said, just being able to have a good relationship, to me, is success. Because it's hard out there and there's a lot of parents struggling, because they're just trying to do the best they can, and then they don't learn till later, wow, I wish I would have done this because now my child is out and they don't even talk to me. So just being grateful that God has allowed me to connect, because sometimes you do bump heads, being able to come back and say, I apologize. I prefer to say I apologize than losing my child. You know what I'm saying? My ego not going to get in between me and my child. It's not going to be all that. Some people let their ego, I can't apologize. If they want to leave, let them leave. But nah, that's not going to be me. I'm going to apologize so you can be sitting right here next to me, so I think family is very important to me. And I didn't really have a lot of close family like that. And so it's very important to me. And as far as success in my business, helping people, helping children mainly, because like I said, we have K through 12 and college, but helping people in general learn, fill in their gaps. Learn math is important. That's one of my main ones, but we have other subjects. But I just, love to see people learn, so me being successful in my business is hearing the stories. Wow, my child almost jumped 2 grades ahead within, a 10-month period. And I got that message recently, it's almost 10 months and he jumped almost 2 grade levels ahead. Or, my child got accepted into an elite school, top 2 in the nation, or, my child got to college, my child can read now, different things like that. I really love it because it's making a difference in their lives. And I know how important education is because that got me to where I am now, helping people to achieve, to take them to the highest position that they can, but by having a strong foundation, because I didn't have a strong foundation. And so I had to struggle, but it built character. You
Yeah.
know, it did build character because I had to struggle and I know how it is. You know, I'm able to connect with people, you know, that's on a lower level and a high level because I was lower level, you know, and I had to work my way up. So I understand, you know, how to fill in gaps and why it's important. So that's success for me.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
What is something that you want your kids to learn just from watching you?
I want them to learn that.
They're always watching.
Right. I want them to learn that it's not going to be easy. And, you know, I tell them my story and where I came from. I want them to know that if my mom could do it, and she didn't have two-parent home. You know, she didn't live in a house. She lived in, you know, a one-bedroom apartment with her brothers and everything else. You know, she didn't grow up in a good neighborhood. She grew up in the hood. You know, the schools were bad. You know, it was crime written. I want them to know if she can do it, then we can too, and there's no excuses. You know, I want them to know that, you know, because you are blessed to have all these things. And I didn't even have 10% of the things that you had, but I had grit and I had my faith in God. And if I was able to do it, nowhere in the world you should be having a pity party. Just know that you can do it and that I have your back because, you know, I know what it takes to get, you know, to come from the bottom and keep pushing forward, you know, and it's not going to be easy, but you can't give up. I just want them to see that, you know, see that you can keep working. If mom can do it, you know, who am I to complain about this? Or who am I to feel ungrateful where she works so hard to make sure we have a better life? You know, so I want them to know that. You know, I'm not going to sit here in a pity party because I don't really have that pity party, you know, mentality because I couldn't have that and get to where I am. I didn't really have time for a pity party, time for tears and time for all those things. I had to keep moving. And because of that, they are able to enjoy certain things. And then they are, you know, they have the intellect. You know, that was one thing I want to make sure they were extra smart to get what they need to get when, you know, and things like that. So just know that you should still strive. There's no excuses.
What would your kids say your superpower is?
So they socialization. They, you know, everywhere we would go, whether I'm in Baltimore or PA or whatnot, you know, a lot of people know me. And so they know that people say, and they see me, they smile. It's always a good thing. So they would see me as being a social butterfly. Everywhere I go, every room I walk into, it's like a lot of people know me. A lot of people say, "Is that your mom?" Or she taught me because I taught like over 1,000 people, you know, and I tutor more than that. No, not more than that. A little bit less than that. But you know, where we go, they would see that I'm social. They would think I'm a social butterfly. You know, oh, mom knows that person. Mom, if we go there, promise me not gonna be here too long. And I said, but it's gonna go in and out. But I can't help it if someone knows me, you know, and I like to make people feel good. So when people see me, they see me with a smile because maybe I helped out with a problem, or maybe they know that, you know, I like to make people feel good about themselves, you know, compliment people, you know, help their children be successful, help them to be successful. So when people see me, they see me with a smile and it's always a conversation. And my son's always sitting there like looking. So yes, I would say social butterfly. I mean, I just love helping people, you know, and then, you know, so I guess that's attractive to people. So yeah,
I was
yeah.
gonna say, like you have the perfect name for your business just off your personality alone and
Oh,
how you
thank you.
raise your kids. Like you are actually living it, diverse and
Thank you.
interactive. Like I don't know if you
Yeah,
noticed that, but like you are
I
literally
didn't.
living it.
I didn't. I did. I'm not perfect. You know, everything is always a struggle. Believe me, I'm not perfect, but I am very grateful. You know, I'm very grateful of everything that I was given because I came a long way. You know, who would have known little Adrian will be here? A lot of people in my neighborhood didn't make it. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people didn't make it, whether they're locked up or whether they're, you know, dead. A lot of people didn't make it. So I'm just very blessed, you know, that he chose me to be one of the ones that make it out.
What is one non-negotiable self-care move that you swear by? Non-negotiable.
Oh, working out. I work out like every morning almost. You know, I have a bike. Yeah, I have a bike. And I gotta do at least 5 miles in the morning. I work out a lot. It makes me feel really good to work out. Um, once I became, because when I was younger, I was really obese and things like that growing up, depressed and things like that. Once I got to the age of probably around 15, 16, I started working out, sometimes even twice a day to like, get the stress off of me. And so when I work out, that's the good part of me, just working out and being healthy. I'm very health conscious. We eat this, we don't eat this, we're not gonna go here. I just believe that we gotta treat our bodies good because that's when people say that's where you live. People say that's your temple, right? I
It
heard that's your
is.
temple, that's where you
It is.
live, right? And so yeah, non-negotiable is working out. If something's going on, especially if something is stressful, that's what helps me get on the bike or, work out the weights, whatever, just working out. That's my non-negotiable. That's part of me when I became my new self as a little girl, when I decided I don't want to be overweight anymore. I don't want to be this, I don't want to be that. That working out is the part that started the new me. And so that's something that I held on to. That's a non-negotiable.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. How
Look,
about you? What's a
I
non-negotiable for you?
honestly, non-negotiable for me is finding time for self. So, just like every day, every day, I
Yeah.
literally, because I'm such an introvert and my
Oh,
social
okay.
battery drains very quickly, especially if I'm overstimulated by my kids. So making time for self each day, during the pandemic, when the kids were home, especially, and I had to navigate, being a stay-at-home mom, like after I got out the
Mm.
army as well. My
Oh,
biggest thing was getting up before my kids so that I can have time in silence with myself. Sometimes
I
it's just
know,
like
right?
that cup of coffee or that cup of tea. It just sits
Yeah,
right. And now I've added yoga to
that's
that
so
morning
good.
routine, and
Yeah, that's so good. Like I said, I'm so proud of you because being, a single mom is no joke. I'm so proud of you. Being a single mom is no joke. And, you be able to, take the time to actually do that for yourself because that's the only way you can be good for your children is to have that time for yourself, to really be productive. So yeah, I know it's a lot, but you're doing it. You're doing it. You're doing it.
it
You are
really is a
doing it.
lot.
Yeah, but you're doing it though. You making it look good though. Look at you.
Thank you, thank you. I
Yeah,
love it.
you making it look good.
Look, while I still got you and the cameras are still rolling, I'm going to ask you another question. Something that I have noticed, not just in my kids, but in a lot of kids. When kids go from elementary school to middle school, sometimes there's a decline in the grade.
So a lot of the decline has to do with the parents. A lot of times when they get to middle school, mom or dad want to pour back because they think the child is getting older, so they think they don't have to be as active, which is a big mistake. I talk to a lot of middle school parents and they be like, oh, he's in seventh grade, so I thought I could pull back and, see how his grades went. When they check their grades like a month later, they like, oh my goodness, what happened? I thought you were doing good. But the parent pulled back because they felt that the child was more independent. But when they get to middle school and high school, they need you to be more active. So it's not so much the child. In elementary school, the parents are so active. They're going to the PTA. They're going on this field trip. They're doing all these things. But once the child started getting a deeper voice in middle school, or the girls start, puberty and things like that, the parents see them unconsciously as okay, they grown now or they growing. They don't need me. But the thing is they need you more. And so, like I tell moms, especially with boys, you gotta hold their hand till they cross the stage, until they cross that high school stage. You don't have to, hold them as tightly, but you do have to be around to make sure things get done. Because if you don't, they're gonna lose some papers. They're gonna lose their book. They're gonna lose their shoes. Boys, they're gonna lose their hats. They're gonna lose their hats. They're gonna be outside 0 degrees with no gloves on because they forgot their gloves. So the thing is, the grades decline is because the parents decide to pull back, because my child is getting older now. They don't need me as much, but it's backwards. They need you more. Because in middle school, their hormones are crazy. They don't know if they're coming or going. And especially seventh grade, the girls are really going wacky wild, and the boys sitting back like, hey, what happened to her? I taught all those grades, so I can tell you each grade was happening. In middle school, they're trying to find themselves. But parents are like, okay, they look grown, but they need a lot of help. They need a lot of attention. And if parents don't get it, unfortunately, middle school, high school, they're gonna get it from their peers. And that's when all the habits and different things occur. So that's why the grades decline, is because the parents pull back. They, for some reason, they feel as though they don't have to be there as much. And I tell them, high school, parents pull back in high school, but high school is really the years you need to be on top of them with the topics, especially if you want them to go to college. Don't say, okay, if they don't get it, they're going to fail out. How in the world are you going to let your child fail out, or let your child, they're going to learn on their own? No, my child not learning on their own. I'm going to be with them all the way. They're going to get these scholarships and they're going to college. And that's why my children got into college. Because, yeah, they believe in assignment. Yeah, they believe their book when there's an open book test. Yes, they believe it. Yes, they will forget to do this. But I was that mom, like, okay, you got this. Okay, we're going to do this. I had to keep things under control. Opportunities going to come, and they might miss a scholarship because they didn't check the emails. Mom has to be on it. And I tell families to create a family email. Create a family email, so when those scholarships and everything come through, you get it just when they get it. You can't trust them to check their emails, because I give a lot of guidance on how to get into college and stuff like that. I wrote a book, helping parents how to get into college, the clear and concise strategies of how to get your child accepted into college, based on my experiences. And so that's why the grades decline, because parents pull back. That's the reason. So,
I believe it, especially.
That's the reason.
It's so easy for a parent to get caught up in what they got going on in their head, and to and you see it suffer. And look, I'm not even gonna sit here and act like I'm on a soapbox or anything, because it has happened to me. I've seen it decline, and it's like, you know what? I'm failing my child. That was the first thought that came to my head. It was like, oh my God, I'm failing my kid.
And a lot of times parents don't want to deal with the attitude. Mm-hmm. Middle school is when the attitude really picks up. It really picks up. And some parents be like, you know what, I'm not even going to deal with it. You do your homework, okay, that's on you. Okay, you want to do this, that's on you. They keep saying that's on you because they don't want to deal with the attitude. And so that's the time you really got to start building those relationships. Okay, we're not getting along, let's go out to dinner. What's your favorite restaurant? You got to really push and make that relationship. But a lot of times the grades decline because the attitude, and parents like, you know what, I'm not dealing with you, go ahead and do you. And they tell their child to do that. You go ahead and do you. They tell their child to go ahead and do them. And then when they see the bad grades, their child like, Ma, I did me.
I did me. Right. And you can't even be mad at it. You know what I also think too, is a lot of these parents are still stuck in a spot where they received trauma, and their inner child is what's showing up. Like, yo, nobody was there for me. I didn't have this. So if I figured it out, my kid can figure it out. Yeah, that's not the thought process we want to share here. We want to sit down and have it be a collaborative effort. How can I be better for my child? How can I coach and encourage my child to be better for themselves? Sometimes you even got to be like, look, I told my daughter too, you want me to go talk to the teacher? You want me to come show up at the school? Like, it's something I learned.
We all need counseling.
College is like, yo, the teacher is getting paid to teach you, to help you. So you have to show up and advocate for yourself, even though
that's true.
Scared, even though you think, like, you think that they don't want to help you. You still have to be like, look, I'm here. You're getting paid to help me. I need help. Help me. And then if the teacher's not helping you, that's when you're like, yo, mom and dad, here's the proof. I told my teacher I try to show up on this day to get help. help me talk to my teacher. And that's when you show up, because there's plenty of times where in college, and it wasn't till it clicked for me that it was like, yo, my teacher is there to help me. This is the days that they have off open office hours. Let me go sit in my teacher's face and be like, look, I am not getting this. Help me. And sometimes we need kids to do that for their parents. I'm like, look, if you got to advocate for yourself against me, please do it. Please do it.
There is a disconnect, and there's a lot of baggage that the parents bring, and then the kids are trying to navigate all the different feelings that the parents have stored up, whether it's fear, whether it's resentment. Parents are coming with a lot, and so sometimes you have to see things a lot differently, in order to have that connection with your child. So it's hard. You're going to say things that you're going to regret, but it's like you don't have any relief. So it's like a matter of time, something's going to happen and it's going to be there. That's why it's good to have like counseling, life coaching, and things like that, because therapy is good for everybody.
Look, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I know that I frustrate my kids, and I know that they frustrate me, and sometimes I do have a lot of pent up anger. In my household, the solution for that is we have a punching bag in the garage.
Oh, that's
lots of gloves. And here's the crazy thing, because I'm listening to you talk about it, and it's like, yes, we want to show our kids, like, you don't know me, y'all. You don't know about who I used to be. And I'm thinking, yo, all I got to do is put on the gloves and hit that punching bag. You think you rough and tough? Watch me do this. But also, at the same time, I'm teaching them coping skills with how to deal with their anger. And it's crazy, because one time my son, he went out there and to the punching bag, and if you go look at my punching bag, there's knife holes in the punching bag.
That's what?
Knife holes. Like, he took the and his dad wanted to be mad at him, and I was like, you know what? The fact that he took it out on a punching bag and not any property, not on anybody else, like, that's commendable in and of itself. He cannot get in trouble for that, because he utilized.
He's serious,
It's something that he has gone to therapy for, is his anger, and also, something that his dad has had to deal with as well throughout his lifetime. So just having that punching bag there, so that it's like, that keeps them from like, hey, I want to slam doors, or I want to stomp up and down. And
as his parents, we really have to be active. I worked at schools where my sons went to make sure they weren't getting treated any particular way. I wanted to be the teacher there, or I would be involved and make sure, because I know, some people culturally see us a certain way. And so, they went to like international schools and stuff like that, and so I just wanted to make sure that, my son is going, I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be around, and you're not gonna target my child. You're not gonna treat them any different. But you just have to be really aware. Even Black girls, you got to be really aware, because they will get treated a certain way, and they don't know how to internalize that, because a lot of times it's being done, in front of the class. Some teachers actually embarrass the child when they go to the board, or they say different things and kids laugh. That is really traumatic, whether it's math or anything else. And a lot of times parents, we don't see that because we're not in the classroom. And when they get home, they don't talk about it, because they can't talk about it, because sometimes the parents is like, what happened? Oh, sometimes the parent is not the most gentle parent for them to say anything. So it was good to be real sensitive, because in elementary school, like I said, they really getting targeted. And they got all this stuff to happen. They might not tell you they've been bullied or might have been picked on. But if you sit down, you talk to them, when they're in a certain state, they'll say, Mom, the teacher was bullying me. Or Mom, this was happening. Or in the cafeteria, they made me stand up. They'll tell you these things, once your relationship is open and they can talk. But that frustration just don't come from nowhere. That comes from years of being pent up of different things, a lot of times in the school system. A lot of times these teachers are really treating these kids bad in elementary. They go to school loving math and they leave hating math. Or they go to school loving education, but when they leave elementary, they hate it. And that's, systematic. Parents have to really pay attention to that because they don't know. They thinking, oh, okay, he's tripping. No, he has a reason before why he's tripping. And the teacher is not going to say that, but you have to really keep that relationship open so that you can hear the different things. Other than that, the child's not going to tell you, and then they're going to buck with you because they feel like no one protected them. Yeah. And they can't really explain it, but it's all this feelings built up. And so they might turn to different things. So y'all understand, especially our Black boys, we got to be so careful.
I think you're going to help a lot of parents with everything that you just said right now, because a lot of people don't realize that. And you got teachers that are teaching from a place of burnout, who haven't reparented their inner child and are treating kids any kind of way. And look, I'm gonna blame them out on the fact that they don't get paid. I'm gonna just put it out there. They don't get paid enough. Our teachers, they don't get paid enough. I think that's part of the reason. And of course, everybody has life stressors and things like that, and how they deal with it and handle it.
And I want to say something real quick. So, because in my tutoring business, I have a lot of parents that have pulled their kids out of school because their kids were traumatized by the teacher, whether it's Islamic school or whether it's traditional school. So a lot of my parents are homeschooling now, because their child been bullied or the teacher treated them wrong. It's just so much that goes into it, but we really have to protect our children, and the parents will be like, I'll tell the parents, I'm so happy that you did pull him out, and then they'd be like, well, I wish I would have been done this. They're having that guilt, but I wish I would have been done this. And I was like, well, that wasn't your time. The time is now. Because it's like a parent guilt when your child been in a situation for years, and maybe you've been so busy, you keep sending them back, and then you get to the point where your child hates school. The child actually tell you they hate school, and you kind of saw it progressing, but you just been so busy doing things and thinking things will get over it. But you can step in at a certain point and you can fix that, but it is traumatic. It's traumatic when you're getting bullied or whatever. Like I said, I've been bullied, so I know it's traumatic. And I've been in schools and I've been around parents that had their sons, black sons, and daughters. The daughters might get in trouble because they're too outgoing. Sometimes our girls want to be outgoing and they're very smart and they're leaders. And so sometimes they don't like that. Some people don't like that. I encourage you to be a leader because I was a leader, but some people don't like that. You're too aggressive. No. She know what she want. She's going to do what she want. You need to accept her for who she is. But no, she can't be the one that's going to be outspoken, And then with boys, they want to play. They want to play like average boys. Everybody else playing, but when they play, they the troublemakers. But no, they just being boys. But because they have a certain tone, to them, no, they're not boys, they grown men. It's just the psyche. So like I said, protect them, protect your sons. I've been always trying to be real protective because I'm like, oh no, you're not gonna do that. I had to tell a couple of teachers a couple of things. My son's standing up in the corner in the cafeteria. You saying all these things about him. I don't want you teaching my son anymore. I told the teacher that.
Right.
And when I came back to the classroom, she was grabbing me, hugging me. He's so smart this, he's so smart that. But let me tell you this. I had to be intentional for my first son because he might have had ADHD. I don't know. I didn't get him diagnosed because I didn't want him to be labeled. So I chose not to. But I made sure he was extremely smart, just like the other ones, because I knew he did have some behavior issues and I knew they were going to label him and put him in special classes. So that boy was smart, undeniable, so they couldn't put him anyway, even though they wanted to. And I was like, how was the test? Did you see the grades? And that's the leverage that I had. You know what I'm saying? They couldn't put him here, put him there. I'm like, what was the score?
Right.
Because I already knew I had to do. And sometimes your child and what you got to put in, because maybe it was a conflict, because it's I had him when I was a single parent, my first one. Mm-hmm. And so his dad was more into like wrestling and things like that. And so he would take him and watch, he would watch wrestling. He would want to wrestle with kids, so he was really aggressive. And so he would do that in the classroom. And so I had to make sure I had a backup plan. And that was to make sure he was extremely smart. He was a bookworm. And like I said, now he's working on his PhD.
Yeah.
If you saw him back then, you would say, "Oh my goodness, that boy gonna wind up somewhere." Teachers probably thought he was gonna wind up in jail. But you can't tell me where my son gonna wind up. You know what I'm saying? You can't tell me. But I put that energy to work, and I said, okay, we're gonna use that energy so that you can get smart. And so that's what I had to do, because I knew his personality. And then later on, once he got to middle school and everything, he calmed down. But elementary school, it was all the way live.
It's been like that for my son. This past year, he had a teacher, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I feel like this male teacher kind of put a label, or was trying to put a label on my son. And it was also an instance where me and his dad, we was in the process of breaking up, and that affected him. And you saw it in his test scores, but also I was seeing that he wasn't doing well in his addition and subtraction. And when I actually sat down with him and helped him with it, I realized that the way that he was taught by his teacher just was not clicking for him. So I showed him what works for me. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I got this." So when he went back and retested, because they wanted to put him, and they basically put him kind of like in remedial, and I'm letting them know, like, yo, my son is in gifted. He tested into gifted in the first grade. That's one of the hardest years to get into the gifted program. I already know. I got 2 girls who tested perfectly.
Wow.
Congratulations. So I knew he was smart, because the year before he's like, "Why are we going to school for 8 hours a day? We got to sit still." He was questioning everything. And,
it's very smart.
And also the behavior, because he's this big personality, like he commands attention. He's the kind of kid that commands attention. And it's like, okay, you might have to quiet your voice down for a couple of hours a day while you're in class, so you can get your work done. And when he retested, scores way up. I'm talking about a big 96-point jump. So I knew, just knowing what is going on. Plus, his dad even showed up to the teacher, and he's like, "Look, if you tell me a lie about my child, I'm going to call you on it."
Right.
But when the teacher explained, his dad was like, "Okay, yeah, this sounds exactly like my son." So he was like, "Yes, we will work on it." And together we all worked on it,
That's good. It takes a village. And in math, the teachers are supposed to be diverse. Whereas though they don't get it this way, you're supposed to teach them different strategies. But there's some narrow-minded teachers, they stick to one way because they might not know other ways, and it makes them feel powerful because they have a certain way. And so kids that don't fit in that, they get penalized because they're not being carbon copies of their teacher or their parent. Because they're not carbon copies and they don't think the same way, they get penalized. Their grades, get decreased, or they get, treated a certain way. But it's not the kids, it's the teachers or the parents that's not creative enough to try to reach their kid and try to get them to where they want to be. But like I said, you stepped in and you said, "Oh no, this is my child," and you showed him, and he like, wow, he got his confidence back. Because that can be a confident killer if you're not good at math, especially math, but you stepped in there and say, "I know my child," where some parents would have just went for whatever the teacher said, and their child would have just failed out and did, because they're so busy, and the parents are the first teachers.
They are.
So if you really listen and you're really active with your kid, what your kid knows how to do and what the kid doesn't, and then COVID, parents really found out where their kids know oh, my kid can't even read. How did my kid get to 6th grade and they can't even read? You start learning things you never even thought. That's why COVID was so important, because parents had to actually learn who the kids were. They had to be forced to learn that their kids were not passing, even though they were in honor classes, right? Getting straight A's, but they couldn't read. And the parents like, I don't understand how my child was in honor class when they can't read. Oh, because your child had good behavior and they didn't bother the teacher, and your teacher gave them an A. That's how your child got an A in honor classes.
There's something wrong with that?
There's something wrong, but sometimes they pass them along. But parents was able to find out. And they were flipping, because some parents had to do the hard work of actually teaching their own kids. But everyone needed to have a transition during that time. They were zapping. Oh my God, I had got so many phone calls. I became a parent consultant during COVID.
Look,
they were losing it.
I can understand. I have a picture from COVID time where my daughter is on top of the desk, and I was like, this is not how we do the... This is not how we're supposed to be doing the online learning at all.
Are you one of those parents in the classroom with your child talking to the teacher while she was teaching? Some parents was doing that.
No, because okay. I was working online at the same time as well. But yes, they were in the room sometimes.
Yeah, it was interesting. A lot of parents said the teacher couldn't teach. I sat online and I watched that teacher. That teacher could not teach, and they had behavior problems. They were actually getting a glimpse of what was happening. And then the teachers, I heard from them, they was frustrated. The parents have the kids running around. All this stuff is going on. The kid is eating while they're supposed to be paying attention. So I heard both sides, and I was just trying to help both teachers and parents. I'm trying to keep everybody sane.
I don't have a problem with them eating snacks as long as their focus is still on the learning. Because sometimes you can't learn. If you a person that need to move around and stuff like that, you are going to have to move around while you're taking in information. And there's so much I gotta teach that I've learned. So oh my goodness.
That's good though. It's always a learning process, believe me.
So I want to thank you so much again for being here with me, for conducting having this conversation. Before we go, what is something you want to leave with the audience, something that they can take away from here? And also, I want you to let them know where they can reach you, because, girl, you got a plethora of resources.
Did you want me to put it in the chat, or you gonna put it like at the end?
I'm gonna also put it in the description, because this is gonna get uploaded to YouTube as well, as my podcast. But I do want you to say it. I'll probably just have you email me everything.
Okay. So the advice that I would give to parents, particularly, I would say be patient with the process. Being a parent, there's no book to parent, to show you how to parent, each individual child. Every child is different. There's a lot of help out there. If you're a single parent, if you're a married parent, there's a lot of help out there. There's, like I said, there's counseling, there's therapy, there's life coaching, educational consultants. I'm here. There's a lot of help. Don't feel that you have to be doing this stuff all by yourself. And it can be affordable. Some things might be expensive, but remember, the money that you put in now is going to be way cheaper than the money you will put in if you don't get your children in check and get your family together. So this investment that you make now, whether it's tutoring, counseling, therapy, you have to do it, because this is going to save your child's relationship. So you have to put the time in. You have to find help. It's going to be frustrating because, like I said, children, middle school age, they are going through a lot of emotions. They're very emotional. They don't know if they're coming or going. Then they got their menstrual, and they have all these different things going on. And so they don't know who they are. And so, you just coming at them is not going to be good, because they're trying to protect who they are. So they're going to fight back, and it's going to get worse. So if you don't get that under control while they're in elementary, middle, when you get to high school, it's going to be almost impossible to build that relationship, because there's going to be so much trauma, so much stuff built up. And when they get to high school, they're like, I'll leave, and they get to the age where they actually think they can leave and be on their own. So I would say be patient. I would say get some help. I would say, if you feel as though you're about to explode, I would say take a break, leave the house, go into a room, start praying before you do something that you're going to regret. Because sometimes they're going to come at you really hard, and you might not be that type of person that accepts that. And so you got to calm down. Like me, you got to calm down, because, somebody come at you the wrong way, you already know you can just flip off, but you got to not flip off, you got to flip in. You got to turn around and say, I want to save this relationship. You got to think about your relationship with your child, and you got to think about your relationship with your grandchildren. Because if your child not dealing with you, they're not going to let you deal with your grandchildren. So you kind of got to think ahead. When you're dealing with these things, it's not just about your child, it's about your grandchildren. So the things you do now is a generational thing. Think about if you could just take it back so you can have a relationship with your grandchild. So just be patient, get some help. It's not only about your child, it's about the grandkids that's to come. And you just got to get some help. And it's okay getting help. Everyone needs help. I need help. Everybody needs help. But the smart thing is to get help to maintain your relationship. So your ego, don't let your ego destroy your relationship. So I would say that. And again, I am Adrian Cox-Settles. I am the founder and owner of Diverse Interactive Learning Tutoring Center. You can email me at info@diverseilearning.com, or you can connect to me by going to my website by diverseilearning.com. But yeah, and my number is 484-273-0195. And I have, like I said, I have numerous resources for parents, whether my books, I have hundreds of books, I have tutoring services, and I just have a lot of experience when it comes to, helping out with parents. So